Video 8, the attempt to cause less supply and the attempt to cause less demand have different consequences on price. This weakens illegalization's power to cause less use through higher prices. Supply-oriented drug policies' aim is to push the supply curve for drugs up and to a lesser extent the demand curve down, thus causing less use and users by means of, i.e. quite intentionally, higher prices. Demand-oriented drug policies' aim is to push the demand curve down, thus causing less use and users, and quite unintentionally, but nevertheless unavoidably, lower prices. Also, there are harm reduction policies that, by taking users off the drug market, cause demand to fall. Harm reduction policies thus push the demand curve down, causing less use and users, again unintentionally, but unavoidably, lower prices. The very same lower prices that are caused by demand-oriented drug policies and, for that matter, globalization and, to some extent, illegality itself. These different policies, though at one in alleged end, obviously at odds to the verge of incompatibility in consequence, yet forced together as a result of statutory illegality and human compassion into a dysfunctional perpetuum mobile, in order to have a non-paradoxical future together, might have their champions make up their minds on how to deal with the problem of their respective policies' different effects on price. Because if they don't, humanitarianism through demand-oriented drug policies and harm reduction policies, and one might argue globalization itself, will continue to corrupt the main tool of illegality, higher prices. To be specific about the consequences of this incompatibility is beyond me. I cannot find anything useful written on the subject, and I cannot even come up with a clever analogy. So if you have something on the issue that I can use, I'd very much appreciate if you contacted me. This has been the first part of my critique of drug illegality and supply-oriented drug policies. After having outlined the logic behind illegalization, I have argued that illegalization's power to cause higher prices and thus less use is not as great as it once was, and that its power to do so continues to diminish. I have tried to show that illegalization, because of globalization, user self-sufficiency, the traditional suppliers' weaponry, and now finally policy incompatibility, is unlikely to cause the much higher prices that it wants to cause so as to reduce drug use. Next, in video 9, 10 and 11, before going on to part 2 of my critique, I will try to throw some light on 3 mechanisms that we rarely think of. Mechanisms that, if illegality really became successful in pushing prices upwards, would cause more people, rather than less, to start taking drugs.